Hello and welcome to the West Sports Show. On today's episode, we break down West Coast selection bombshell with the man who broke the story. We've got all the latest fresh from the Fremantle training track, and we get the word on the ground from Adelaide ahead of gather round. We are brought to you by TABtouch. Got the touch. Download the TABtouch app today. Chances are you are about to lose. For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Hello, Barra. It's been a long time coming, us doing a podcast, G-Man.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this, to have you on board, my friend. I don't know where Quarters is, halfway across the nation or something, is he?
Yeah, my name's Jackson Barrett, filling in for Glenn Quartermain. I think he's getting pretty close to Adelaide. I presume he's targeting tonight's game. And a man who is already in South Australia is Mitchell Woodcock, joining us live from Adelaide. Hello, mate.
Hey guys, yeah, great to be here from Adelaide. Lovely time of the year. It's gather around the excitement, there's buzz, and massive game tonight with the Crows and the Cats starting the big game at Adelaide Oval. Obviously games down in the Barossa and at Norwood, and I was out at Sturt's home ground and Unley today at West Coast training. So this is the massive buzz. There's plenty of people around. There's scarves and jumpers of all sorts, and where else would you rather be but over here in Adelaide for what's going to be a massive weekend of football.
This isn't your first weekend over there, is it, Mitch? Does it feel like it's something that's building? Because I feel like the public sentiment around it this year is as big as it has been. There was some scepticism early. Last year was great, and this one feels even bigger.
Yeah, I was at a press conference yesterday, Jackson, with Andrew Dillon and the Premier for South Australia, Peter, I can't say his last name, Malinauskas. Yeah. He's a very... very charming sort of man, very different sort of politician to what we have in WA, I think. And he was saying there's 90 extra flights coming into Adelaide this week. I think they're up by about 30% on the crowds. And they're debuting the Barossa this weekend with two big games, including one of our games with, Fremantle against Richmond over there. So they're really excited. There definitely is a big buzz. I was in the middle of Adelaide last night to have dinner, and just the people that were around and the footy fans, it was incredible. So South Australia is certainly turning it on, and it's going to be hard. I know there's a big debate about who's going to, get the contract after next year, but it's going to be hard to take it off South Australia at the moment.
Now, Mitch, we've got to start with the story of the day, which is that West Coast have dropped Tim Kelly. You flagged the news yesterday afternoon and then broke it a couple of hours later. This is a massive statement by the Eagles, Mitch. Can you talk us through how they came to the decision, why they made the decision, and what Andrew McQualter had to say about it this morning?
Yeah, Jackson, it was one of those ones where you sort of saw the writing on the wall for, maybe not Tim Kelly, but for a statement to come this week after what was a disastrous performance against Greater Western Sydney. There's no other way to put it. I felt like the Giants almost put the cue in the rack at times, and the margin could have been a lot bigger than the 81 points. But Kelly is the first victim, really, I suppose, of a big statement at selection table for Andrew McQualter. Only his fourth game, now heading into his fifth. Kelly only had the 14 disposals. Most importantly, though, he had the 3 kicks and the 1 tackle. And I think that 1 tackle really hurts him, given that, West Coast really were punished in that midfield at the weekend. There was one stage where GWS kicked 4 goals from centre bounces. I think they had 3 goals from 11 disposals without West Coast touching it. And just for a senior player, he was the most senior player in that midfield at the weekend with Tom Gross and Clay Hall. And just for a senior player not to be able to impact the game as much as he should have, I think was the writing on the wall for him. And he'll now play for West Coast Waffle side against Subiaco tomorrow night. So he's the first big casualty. I believe Tyler Brockman, from all reports, hasn't flown either today. Jamie Cripps and Liam Ryan have come over, and Noah Long looks like he's gone home as well. He wasn't at training this morning. So some big selection statements made. Jake Waterman will return, and so will Jack Hutchinson. He'll come in for Kelly into that midfield. And I'm expecting Harry Edwards to also be named, guys, to try and help out Sandy Brock, who we all saw got pretty heavily beaten by Jesse Hogan at the weekend. And the task doesn't get any easier this weekend with 2 Coleman medalists in Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay.
Strange decision, though, isn't it, to make an example of Tim Kelly? I find it quite strange going in against Cripps and Co. without your most experienced midfielder. So I presume Harley must be going back into the middle. I liked him off half back. I looked at his stats. He is down. Tim is down on all his career stats, so for what he normally delivers, he is down. But if you put him up against everybody else, he's first in clearances and goal assists, second in contested possessions at West Coast, third in disposals, and fourth in tackles. So I guess it's got to be something about defensive running or two-way running and not pushing back and helping the defence, because he's never been great on that. He's more of the third banana, isn't he? And when he has to be the number 1 banana, he's not great. But then against Brisbane, he had 30-odd and was super.
2 weeks ago.
It was only 2 weeks ago. So This is a real statement. I don't know if it's because he flew back to see his family as well, and should have stayed. He should have gone straight to Adelaide, or did he know that he was already going to get the flick? What's your reading of that?
No, so several players went back to WA who have young families. That included Tyler Brockman, who has a newborn only just days before last weekend's game.
But he's not coming back either, mate. It's only Cripsy's the only bloke coming back. So I find that whole thing, I've got to say, I might be a traditionalist, but I find that all very strange that blokes come home and don't stay with the team. And I get that the family connection. I know that Tim's got other challenges. Brockman had a new bub.
Yeah.
Don't know what Cripps' story was. And even Liam Ryan just hanging in Perth. I don't know who's been looking after him. He flies over this week. That whole disjointed nature of it, it's not sort of what used to go on. And I don't know if the players still run the club or if they put too much pressure on, because that's what used to be the knock on them, didn't it? And that's what's been part of the problem over the journey, right back to COVID, when they just couldn't suck it up when they went to Queensland and blew up. And there was a premiership in the offering. Richmond took the other attitude and ended up winning the flag.
I'm always wary about commenting on people's personal situations, but when you take it back to a great interview in the West where Brady Hoff said that this is a business trip, we're going away to bond together and potentially have some difficult conversations across a tough couple of weeks and that sort of thing, I would have thought guys like that, like long-time senior footballers, would be in a position to make arrangements for a couple of days, right? Like I know that they travel for decent chunks of the year, but like I cover a lot of cricket, and some of those blokes spend 30 days at home a year and they've got families as well. So I would have thought that arrangements could have been made. I understand looking after those sort of guys in those sort of positions, but for 3 or 4 days
and you know
in
what,
an important part of the period.
If he was in Adelaide, say if Tim had gone to Adelaide from Sydney, it would have been much tougher to drop him, because then you have to send him home. And then the media is at the airport waiting for him and we're door stopping him. But Mitch, what's your spin on it?
Well, for starters, Barrett, you mentioned before Harley Reid going back in the midfield. Adrian McCalder confirmed today that he'll actually be playing at halfback again this week. From training today, it looks like Baker and Graham are both going to go back into the midfield. So Graham spent a bit of time at half forward last week on Lockie Whitfield, and that just didn't work. Baker spent a bit of time at halfback to give them some drive. So both those two I expect to be back in the midfield, alongside Tom Gross, who I thought was pretty impactful, and Clay Hall, who's had a really good start to the season in his second year. Look, to be honest with you, the players going back for families doesn't really come into much for me. I'm comfortable with it. It's only a trip to Adelaide. They've still got plenty of senior players around the joint at the moment in Liam Duggan and Oscar Allen. And look, you couldn't make a statement on Oscar Allen, even though he's out of form, given what's happened with the Hawthorn Sam Mitchell meeting and the blow-up about that. If you drop him, all of a sudden the headlines are, or the questions come, is he been dropped for that reason as well as form? It just creates a storm. And Liam Duggan...
Who's in worse form, you reckon? Is it Oscar Allen or Tim Kelly?
Well, probably Oscar Allen in terms of the fact he hasn't kicked a goal in 2 weeks. But, if you ask Andrew McQualter, he did his job last weekend on Sam Taylor. So he was a
decoy, basically. I mean, what a slap in the face.
Do you think he could do the same thing against Wiedering? Because for me, I think Oscar Allen is droppable, particularly if Jake Waterman's coming back in. Like if Allen goes, this becomes Waterman's forward line. Archer Reid was great last week. Jack Williams, they're still picking. I reckon Allen is very droppable. And
how's his mentality going in now against Wiedering after also having to run around just pulling Taylor away from the channel?
Wiedering's just as impactful on games, so I wonder if he does the
same job. Yeah. Graham's obviously going to tag Cripps, eh? You reckon, Mitch? I reckon that might have to be the way it is, because who's going to take Cripps otherwise?
Barrett, we haven't seen a tag at all this year from Andrew McQualter, including Caleb Sarong. We've seen a bit of run with, but not a full-blown tag. So I'd be surprised if there is a tag tomorrow. I think they're going to try and win the game off their own merit and try and keep going with this new game style. The one thing I will question is that the amount of changes of players in positions to start the season has been quite significant. I've already mentioned Graham and Baker, who spent time at half forward and half back. Harley's gone to halfback. I just wonder if there's a bit of instability within the 22 at times, week to week, and I wonder how much that's affecting form. I thought Graham was probably their best midfielder in round one against Gold Coast, so for him to spend time at half forward at the weekend was very perplexing. So I know that they're trying to find the best makeup for their team going forward, and Gross and Clay Hall needed some centre bouncers considering they're the next generation of midfielders, but I'd like to see some guys settle in positions just to be able to get some stability and get some key roles being played.
What have you made of Hall's start to the season, Mitch? I think he was the one that West Coast fans were really keen to see go back in there.
Yeah, and I really liked it. I thought he was really impactful in that Brisbane game. He had a team high 7 clearances, and he came in the day before when Graham went out with that injury. I think he's been really sensational, and Tom Gross was so impressive last week. I'm a big rap for this young man. I think they've found one. He was a pick in the 40s from off the top of my head, so I really think they've found two players there. The problem I think they have in that is that Clay Hall is not the quickest. Tom Gross has explosive power, but you wouldn't say he's got lightning speed, and the same sort of areas with Jack Graham, Tim Kelly, and even Harley Reid. So I do think they miss a bit of pace in there. That's where Graham comes in. But if I'm Andrew McQualter at the centre bounce tomorrow, if you're starting with a Baker, a Graham, and a Gross, or even a Clay Hall, the one thing I'm asking for is tackling pressure and intent on the ball. Because at the weekend, there was too many times that GWS ran out the front of stoppages and were able to hit Jesse Hogan up and with that very little pressure. And I think that was probably the most disappointing element from the weekend. The margin was one thing, but the way they lost at times, and like I said, I mentioned those goals before out of centre clearances, you can't have that at an AFL level that consistently. You know, they do happen on the odd occasion in a game, but when that happens 4 times in a row, it's panic buttons. And I think that's probably why Kelly has come out of this side. So look, for me, if I'm West Coast, I'm asking about intent on the ball, some tackling pressure, and not to let Carlton, like the likes of Cripps, Walsh, walk out the front of stoppage and be able to really put pressure on West Coast defence against what's a pretty powerful attack with Mackay coming back.
Barrett, I'm interested in the selection of Harry Edwards. Like, it was baffling that he was dropped for last week. Now Mackay's pairing up with Colonel, and I mean, we don't know for sure, but Mitch is in a pretty good position to tell us that it looks like he's coming back in. What sort of a message does that send to a young man who's just been cast aside for a matchup with one Coleman medalist and is now coming back for one with another?
It's very strange, isn't it? And I suppose last week he was probably sitting at home in Perth going, how good's this? I'm not playing on bloody Hogan, who's just going for his 9th. Could have kicked 10. You know, if you're on someone when they kick 10, that gets replayed so much, it just destroys your self-confidence. So I think Harry probably needs pumping up. Brock he showed a bit, Brock, and he wasn't the worst. And Marek is tall as well, so they have got 3 talls, but it's a very inexperienced backline. And Mitch, I was kind of hoping that they would send the co-captain back, even though he's been under the gun. And then we've had Duggan cop it from all sorts for that chase on Darcy, the young fella. And it looked like he handed over maybe to Baker, or it didn't work. I think Duggan must be injured as well. So fair to say the captains aren't going great, Mitch, both of them.
Well, look, Barrett, to the point of Harry Edwards, he actually stayed over with the team as an emergency, the poor guy, to do some running after the game with Locke Rawlinson and Hamish Davis. They were out there while the rest of the team were relaxing, or not relaxing, but recovering from that game. He's over here at the moment. I've seen him do a lot of work with Jake Waterman and Oscar Allen at training. So that's why I'm indicating I think he has to come back into the side. We saw Oscar Allen didn't go back because he was actually playing that almost defensive forward role on Sam Taylor. I would have liked to have seen West Coast isolate those two in the goal square. And I think I'd like to see that tomorrow with Jacob Wiedering. I want to see Oscar Allen as your deepest forward, one-on-one, try and hit him up and just back him. Have a bit of confidence in your co-captain and back him and say, we expect you to kick some goals here. We're going to kick it to you. We're going to give you the best advantage we can when we go inside 50. Because West Coast actually didn't get smashed in the inside 50s. They just didn't use it well going forward at all. And I reckon they've got the firepower this weekend with Jake Waterman and Oscar Allen to be able to match Carlton if they can get their midfield mix right and if they can get some clean ball in there. Adrian Barich today said that Adelaide Oval is a contested ball venue historically. Well, that's a challenge for West Coast right now.
Mitch, before we jump off the Eagles, you had a chat to Luke Hodge yesterday, who we know was another highly touted number 1 pick. He had some advice for Harley Reid, and then you put some questions about Harley to McQualter this morning. Can you give us the latest there?
And Luke Hodge was a great interview yesterday. If you haven't seen his chat about today with me about West Coast, it's fascinating how he believes that, you just got to give Andrew McQualter some time to get this team right. It's a bit of a reset under a new coach. And then, of course, you have to ask him about Harley Reid, given they're both number 1 draft picks. And there was the story this week broken, though, about how there's multiple offers on the table for Harley, including a 3, a 5, and a longer, believed to be 7-year deal on the table for Harley. One of them, the 5-year deal, is believed to be considerable, that it could actually be a club record at West Coast, close to $2 million a year to try and keep him. Obviously, out of contract next year. Interestingly, McQualter, there was a lot of press today at McQualter's press conference, and he was asked stringently about Harley if he's going to be here next year. He's confident he'll be here next year and says Harley's invested in the program. But obviously, he couldn't say if Harley's going to be beyond 2026 at the Eagles because he hasn't put pen to paper. So caught in a rock and a hard place there, McQualter. I thought he handled it really well, but he just doesn't at the moment know if West Coast is the home for Harley Reid beyond his initial 3-year deal. And I don't think we're going to know for some time, even though those deals are on the table. His management will be looking over them, talking with them. There's going to be offers from Victoria clubs. I know he's been linked heavily to Essendon and Hawthorn. He was a Geelong fan and from Tongala, so I could see them also making a play for him. And if you're another club like a Melbourne, a Carlton, any of those clubs, if you think you've got the opportunity to get Harley, you can find a way to get draft picks and you can find a way to get salary cap space. So I think there's going to be 10 clubs after him, not just those 2 that everyone keeps talking about. So watch this space at the moment, but West Coast would love him to sign on the dotted line sooner rather than later.
Barrett, we are very fresh from Fremantle training, jumping to the other side of town. The big question is Sean Darcy. So we got to look at him, of course, as he's becoming a bit of a weekly occurrence. Justin Longmuir did his press conference before training and told us that 3 or 4 guys needed to get through the session. Sean Darcy, Hayden Young, Sam Switkowski, Nat Fyfe were all among them. Darcy's probably the one of the biggest interests because, of course, there's no Luke Jackson this week to play Richmond. What did you make of the big fella during this session? Do you think he gets up? I would say he probably gets named in the extended squad and they figure it out once they get to Adelaide. What do you reckon? Yeah,
it looks like they're both getting on the plane, right? Sean Darcy and Hayden Young. I thought Darcy looked pretty good. I thought training, I thought it looks like they're going to have to play him. I don't know if the Noah Bolter thing comes into it at all because we asked Longmuir about that, didn't he? And he didn't want to buy into it, which is clever given that the Victorian Premier, Jacinta Allen, just spanked the AFL and Richmond about you better not play him sort of thing. You know, how that's a disgrace. How dare you? I don't know what your view is on that. But it was very interesting at training. Darcy looked good. I didn't think Young was as convincing. Switkowski obviously comes in, which puts Dudley under the pump, depending if Young plays. There's a lot to be sought through, and it's out in the Barossa as well, isn't it? And I think it's going to be pretty warm. So, yeah, I don't know. What was your view?
I did the Tuesday show with Cod, of course, and he flagged that he would actually play Reedy and Darcy. And at the time, I wasn't entirely for it. But looking at today's session, I think there's a decent chance they do it. So they played an 18-on-18 match sim, which of course leaves room for the guys that had come in and sit on the bench to then be in the second string team. But Liam Reedy rucked without the bib in the first string team, and Sean Darcy was in the second. Darcy was then doing some drills later on that looked like they were a best 23 kind of setup, and Reedy pulled up stumps on the session a little bit early. But I just wonder if, like we've seen what it looks like with Voss rucking. I don't think they can risk Voss rucking for 3/4 of the game. And if Darcy breaks down against Nankerv and you have Nankervis against Voss for large periods, it could be in some strife.
That makes a lot of sense. So Voss goes out, eh?
I think Voss has a chance to go out. Like, clearly he's offered something forward. He was in that second string team at Match Sim as well, but his goal kicking has been an issue. My issue with it, speaking to Cod earlier in the week, as listeners would have heard, was that what the big fellas are offering once they go forward. Because Reedy did it for periods against Geelong and didn't look particularly mobile. Darcy, first game back, like what's he going to offer in that forward line? That'd be my concern over it. But I wouldn't rule it out. I reckon there's a good chance that by Thursday afternoon they're both named in the extended squad, and I think there's a chance they could play.
I reckon you're onto something there. And Nat Fyfe, he looked all right at training, but clearly they're still... I think, what are they waiting for? They're probably just waiting for an opportunity to play him. So he's probably out of the best 23 now. The dual Brownlow medalist is not in the Dockers best 23.
Yeah, I think the way Longmuir put it today indicated that basically they're not going to allow Fyfe the time to get into top gear at AFL level. So he's not going to play until he's 100% confident in his game, in his body, that he's like fully fit at the top of his game. So they're going to give him time to do that at Peel before they pick him. They've clearly, like, the midfield depth has come along. Nathan O'Driscoll, albeit injured at the moment, he's been injected in there. We're expecting Hayden Young back. We know that Switkowski can add to that mid-rotation, Bolton as well. So there are so many more options there than there were last year when he played 22 games. So I liked what Longmuir said today about, like, at his absolute best, or at the best of what he can offer at the moment, he's in the best 23. But I don't think that's right now. I think he probably plays for Peel on the weekend.
Yeah, and Mitch Dudley might have to go out, which that's how it is in footy, and that's what you want, really. You want, like, good players out of the team, not trying to force their way back in, because Switter comes back unless he can find another way of rejigging things they're all going pretty well, their small forwards at the moment.
Yeah, guys, I'm curious to see where Fremantle go with this. I think Isaiah Dudley's really added some craft to Fremantle's forward line, and I think he helps the guys like Tracy and Amos, but it's a great problem to have for Fremantle right now in terms of being able to drop a goal like Voss and Dudley, because they're both in form. I know Voss's goal kicking's been a bit iffy at times, but to at least have the opportunities to kick a goal is the hardest part, I think, and if he can clean up his finishing, which I think his ability to do, and I'm back Fremantle to be able to do it, then he's going to have an impact in the future. I wrote this today in an analysis. It's an interesting selection here with Sean Darcy, and it could be season defining. You know, if they play him and he gets injured again, you have to wonder if he comes back any time before August or late July, given his injury history. But if they don't play him, they're going up against Toby Nankervis, who I thought was best on ground in their round 1 win over Carlton, and is probably leading their best and fairest. And I think he's leading the hit out for the AFL at the moment. So the biggest threat to Fremantle winning this game is Nankervis, I think. So if you don't play him and you have Liam Reid and he gets well beaten, do Fremantle then potentially lose this game, which I think if the Dockers thought they were under pressure after that Geelong round 1 loss, I think they're going to come for them really hard if they lose this game in the Barossa, and top 4 all of a sudden becomes a climb. I know it's really early in the season, but you've got to bank these wins very much, especially when, you know, you're going in as the favourite, and if you're going to make top 4, and then you've got to get some upsets along the way. And they would have penciled this one in as a win early on in the season, but Nankervis probably stands between them and an easy 4 points.
Mate, well said. And Mitchie, I reckon you maybe can you track Cozzy Pickett over the weekend and just see if he catches up in secret meetings with the Dockers, because it got asked today, didn't it?
Yeah, he didn't like it. He didn't like it, J.O. He shut that down really quickly.
The straightest of
You thought he shut the bolted stuff down pretty quickly. He gave that nothing.
Well, I asked Andrew McQualter if he was having any coffee dates with any other players. He said I'd have to follow him around, and then he basically just about invited me to go watch Cyndi Lauper tonight. So I'm really not sure what's going on with our coaches. But
is that what McQualter's doing?
No, I don't know if he's doing it. He actually was at the NRL a couple of weeks ago, but he said that Cyndi Lauper's onto the entertainment scene.
Oh,
so
surely
free time, go and watch that. And I was like, I think I got a bit of footy to watch, but be interesting to see if there's much conversations around the traps, because there's 18 clubs here over the weekend, managers and everybody around.
Mate, the cafes in the CBD will be heaving. Watch out, Peter Abbott Cafe. And finally Street, I think. I reckon that's the spot, Mitch.
He must be back in the purple circle on Mitchie at West Coast. Mate, what did you make of Tim Kelly's manager coming out, and did he speak to you? Who did he speak to? You know, our mate Anthony. I love Anthony. I actually love the bloke. He's a fantastic guy and big South Fremantle man, vice president, I think. But that was pretty unusual to have your manager come out speaking for you.
Yes and no. Like, I understand where you're coming from, and not every manager does it. Anthony doesn't have a cast of thousands in terms of in his group. He's got a very select view, including Tim Kelly. A lot of them are South Fremantle-based players or come from South Fremantle. Tim's out of contract. I reached out to him after I found out he was dropped and asked if I could get some information about where Tim's contract is at, and he sent back a statement about his dropping, which I think is, an interesting point. But, Tim's obviously not allowed to speak about it, but it also then allows us to get an insight into where Tim is at and how he's feeling about it. So I think it's one of those things that it's part of the new age of media. It's part of the way managers and that are rolling. And I quite enjoyed it. And I think the more open communication we have between managers, clubs, players to the public through us as the media, I think it's really good. And I think it's a positive step. So look, is it normal? No, but I think it's quite a good move by Van der Wielen, considering. Given
we're back on Kelly, Mitch, I want to ask a question. I mean, this is a guy that 4 or 5 weeks ago came out and said that he'd lost his love for footy and was like on a mission to find it again. Now he's been dropped. He's playing at Minres on a Friday night against Subiaco. Do you see him being at West Coast next year? Could it be time for Tim Kelly to look for something that might freshen up his career a little bit?
This is the interesting one for me, Jackson, and it's overall not just Tim Kelly. I think it's the list at West Coast, the way we're looking at it at the moment. This is Andrew McQualter's first season in charge, obviously, but it's also going to be his first full off-season in charge, where he's going to be able to help make some massive decisions with Matt Clark. He would have had time last year to do that towards the end of the year with some of those fringe guys that we saw get delisted late, but a lot of them were either gone or on the way out by the time he got there. This is his chance. I think there's about 10 guys out of contract alongside Kelly and Allen. So they've made some overhauls in recent years. This is a full year of him being able to not only talk to other players from other clubs, but have a look at the draft, have a look what's out there, have a look at the holes in the list, have a look at, we've already seen him make positional switches with Marrick and Hutchinson. So he's going to be doing all of this. So for someone like Kelly, you ask if he needs a refresher, maybe, but they also may look at maybe even changing his position before the end of the year to see where they can fit him in. Overall, though, I'm just going to be interested to see the moves that West Coast make. And we've also seen them be ruthless in the past. We saw Zach Langan a few years ago. He got delisted with a year left on his contract. So could there be some other moves that are made with some of the other guys around there that maybe have 1 or 2 years left and they, agree to pay them out? They're going to have plenty of salary cap space, guys. There's no shortage of that, given they're not overpaying a lot of players. And, if Oscar Allen, they don't stump up the money, he's not going to be there. And Chad Warner looks like he's going to stay at Sydney. So outside maybe Harley and a few other guys, they're not going to be paying a lot of players next year. So it's going to be really interesting to see where McQualter takes this side, because it's going to be his side next year. I don't think it's his side fully yet.
Yeah, with Tim Kelly, given his family circumstances, I would say he couldn't leave Western Australia. So it's really only Fremantle. I don't know if they could deal with Fremantle. Could he think that he might win a flag that he missed at Geelong, at Fremantle? Would he be worth taking on? You might want to comment on that. Before you do, boys, can I just say there was some commentary today from a well-known commentator that because Brandon Parfitt is good mates with Tim Kelly.
I've been meaning to ask you about this.
See, so suddenly Brandon Parfitt's leaving Perth in mid-season draft.
So take your Channel 7 cap off and put your...
Jacko, is he sweating?
I'm sweating, all right.
Put your Perth Footy Club hat on. A suggestion made by... he's a commentator on another network, but he's also a rival waffle captain, Hamish Brayshaw. That the Eagles could be looking at Brandon Parfitt. I reckon the Eagles would be looking at Brandon Parfitt because he's a bloody good footballer. It looks like he's arrived here.
Not because he's mates with Tim Kelly.
Less so than being mates with Tim Kelly. What do you say to that as the president of the club that's just signed him? He looks in great nick. I'm sure you want to see you guys do well.
I'm sure, you can't just pick up Parfitt because he's friends with Tim Kelly. And was Tim Kelly going to even be there at the end of the season? We were talking about him leaving, maybe going to the Dockers. It was an extraordinary thing to say. It worried me, though, because Andrew, his brother, is really good friends with Charlie Constable, our captain. So it's all wheels within wheels. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, what's going on? So I'm bringing
get away from you, Barrett.
I'm bringing up Charlie going, is there anything in this? I mean, obviously Parfitt played well in round one, so they'll be looking at him, but he wouldn't be AFL match ready, and you don't want to be the stable pony to the thoroughbred, and he could be playing in the waffle. So, but I suppose going back to that question though, would you like to, if Tim Kelly was to go to Fremantle, would that add something to him? Could that be the extra midfield that they need? Because they haven't really got a big body midfield. I mean, Jono's sort of coming through.
I don't mind it, but I'm not sure I see him as a starting midfielder at Fremantle. I think it would be the kind of case where Tim Kelly's not keen to leave. Freo offer him a couple of years on basically like a veteran's minimum to, be a depth midfielder, play at half forward. He might be an upgrade on O'Meara over the next couple of years as his body gets a bit sorer.
He's 30 though.
He is. But I think there's probably a couple of good years out of Tim Kelly if you can unlock that motivation.
If he gets his love back. Yeah, Mitch, if he can find his love, mate.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I wondered how much you were sweating on that last night, Barra. I thought you might have bought an apartment somewhere in Cottesloe and chucked Parfitt in there just to make sure he stays a little bit longer.
Hang on.
The other one I'd be worried about too, though, is Charlie Constable himself actually started in really good form. He's younger than Parfitt.
You won't have anyone left.
I thought he played really well the weekend. And then Aaron Clark as a forward as well. 40 goals in 13 games. So if anybody's looking out there, go to Lachlan on next weekend if you want someone in the mid-season draft. No, I actually wonder if West Coast need a bit of leg pace. He's really stressed about Ginnivan and Ken Hinkley right now, Quarters. No, I'm really curious, guys. I think West Coast need a bit of pace. So I'm looking over at, a few other clubs in, South Australia and Victoria to see what they've got, and also a bit of ruck depth. And
that's a good
I thought
point.
at the weekend, there's some guys in the VFL, we've spoken previously and written about Braden Crossley at Southport and that. So
Ollie
I think they're going to be looking Ollie Eastland.
Yeah, he took it up to Sean Darcy. I was impressed with what he could do against Darcy.
He's an incredible ruckman.
Yeah.
So there's some guys out there. So look, it depends on what West Coast need at the time. Hamish Brayshaw, I'm not doubting his information, but I would say that if they are thinking about bringing someone in to make Tim Kelly happy, then they're probably not making the right move, but I can't see that happening as such. I think if they want Brandon Parfitt, it's because they want Brandon Parfitt, which I can tell you right now, and I know Barrett knows this, there were multiple AFL clubs looking at him over the preseason just in case and keeping tabs on him. And I'm sure there's multiple AFL clubs keeping tabs on him right now. I'm sure there was heaps at South Freo and Perth at the weekend. So, and it would be for other guys too that are out there, some, Fred Rodriguez, the draftee, and multiple guys, but definitely Brandon Parfitt, Charlie Constable, those kind of guys would be being looked at. So if West Coast go that way, look, would it help Tim Kelly? Yes. Is it the only reason they get Brandon Parfitt? I highly doubt it, especially with the rebuild they're in. He's 27. I'm not sure that, he's part of their long-term future. He might be able to help short-term, but to please Tim Kelly, I just don't think it would be part of their thinking.
I know Tim Kelly's out of contract, so this is a hypothetical, but who says no in this hypothetical straight swap? Tim Kelly for Neil Erasmus. The Dockers in the window. They get a couple of good years out of Tim Kelly as a guy added to their midfield rotation and play some forward stuff. And then West Coast get the speed. He fits their age profile better. He's not playing, or he's, on the fringe at Fremantle.
I like it a lot because Erasmus 23, so he's in their age frame. Yeah, that's. What do you think, Mitchie?
I think it's a possibility. If I'm West Coast, I'm asking, you're not going to get it, but I'd be asking for a Cooper Simpson, given his speed off halfback is, I think, what they more need. But Neil Erasmus would fit in nicely at West Coast. Like you said, Jackson, he fits that age demographic, but you also then have to probably assess at the end of the year, where the guys like Tom Gross and Clay Hall and Jack Hutchinson are at. Because if you're backing those guys in the long term, you've got to squeeze Neil Erasmus in as well. And hopefully you've got Harley Reid for at least another year, if not longer. So, is he surplus to your needs? You have to wonder, because Tim Kelly may be surplus to their needs at that point of the season as well. And then you've still got Elliot Yeo for another 2 years on, what you'd assume is not the money he was previously on, but still decent money. So you want to be getting him in the team as well. Jack Graham, you've got for a while on money as well. So look, there's all sorts of options. But look, Neil Erasmus fits all those areas, so it's a possibility, and I don't mind it.
Cooper Simpson has looked great at halfback the last couple of weeks. Had 30 against Claremont on the weekend, and they're working on his defensive stuff. He spent time in match sim directly on Shea Bolton.
The way
no better way to learn.
The way their backs played with all those inside 50s, though, there's no space at the moment, even with Walker out. But because that was the amazing thing about the Dockers winning is that on the stats, they should not have won. They had 20 less inside 50s. Their defence was magnificent, and their efficiency in the forward half was incredible.
If it wasn't for their forward half absolutely humming, they would have been in trouble. I think they probably struggled to play front half footy, as the coaches like to call it, and retain the ball down there. It came out pretty quickly, and they never really got a hold of things in the contest battle through midfield either.
That's not a way to win games, though, is it, Mitchie? That's dangerous. Danger, Will Robinson, when you come in against real good sides. You can't win those games.
No, but I'd also like to see a stat more often out there about inside 50s that are more cleaner and controlled than some of the dirty ball that the Bulldogs went with at times, that because of the Fremantle pressure up the ground, they weren't able to deliver to their forward line. So there's good inside 50s, and then there's just inside 50s at times. I thought Fremantle's were a lot cleaner. They were on the spread. I read Danny Laidley's column the other day, which was fantastic about how they changed their ball movement. And I think that's the way they really opened that game up. So that's the way I'd be looking at it, is that while Fremantle had less inside 50s, they were better ones and they were more efficient.
All right, before we have a quick look at some of the other games, let's get the latest odds from TABtouch.
Shorttey's tips.
It's producer Josh here, and with me is David Shortte from TABtouch. G'day, Shorttey.
G'day, Josh. Nice to be with you.
Who is your hot tip for this weekend?
I was sticking fat with Gold Coast. They've been really good. They've won their first 3 games in fine style. The money's been very good for them to make the top 8 now as well. $3.50 into $1.40.
The Hawks are flying, but it's not good news for one of their gun players.
Exactly right. Our cooler will be Will Day. So after a stellar start to the season, he suffered a stress fracture in his foot, and he's likely to be on the sidelines for a few months.
And who's your hot tip for this weekend?
Hot tip, we're aiming up for 3 on the bounce with our multi. This time I'll take a multi with Gold Coast and Hawthorn both to win, into Freo to win by 16 or more, and Carlton to win by 16 or more. That's paying $3.14. Give them strength this weekend.
Are there any odds for Jack Ginnivan throwing up the plane celebration at all?
No odds, but I'd say if he kicks a few goals in that particular contest, we're likely to see him get airborne.
Nice. And who's on the drift this weekend?
On the drift are the Western Bulldogs. They're $2.50 out to $2.65 for their clash against Brisbane this weekend.
And we saw him over in the West last weekend. Who is your player to watch?
Player to watch is definitely Sam Darcy, the big Bulldog. He was excellent last week with 5 goals against Freo. He's paying $10 to kick the first goal of the match, $4.30 to kick 4 or more goals. The Dogs look for him a lot. I would expect him to show up this weekend.
Thank you, Shorttey. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, Mitchell, you're on the ground in Adelaide. Thursday night footy tonight, Adelaide and Geelong. This feels like the game of the round. I reckon the game of the round are the first two and then maybe the last one. Let's have a quick tip, Adelaide and Geelong for tonight.
Yeah, just quickly, Barrett, I get to see our man live in Riley Thilthorpe. We speak about him every week. I'm excited to see the caveman run out. That's what he looks like. And Darcy Frotherty. Got that tattoo at the weekend. I love this Crows forward line. I'm tipping the Crows at home. I reckon they're going to start gather around with a bang, and it'll be their best win of the year. I'm a backer of the Crows. I think they've got the capability to finish top 4. I think they'll probably finish top 6, but I'm all in on Adelaide right now. Unless they get injuries, I think they're a contender.
Yeah, I'll take Adelaide as well. Jack Henry out worries me. They've got a bit to deal with there, so Blitzards will have to go back in a bit of a shuffle. That concerns me.
Should be a great game. Geelong, I think Geelong favourites or is Adelaide favourites? It'll be pretty tight anyway.
Adelaide favourites with the bookies.
Yeah, Riley Thilthorpe, just unbelievable. He could win the Coleman medal. I think he's currently leading with Hogan or whoever it is. But yeah, I see this game as a belter, but I think you're right, boys. I think Adelaide in Adelaide.
Collingwood and Sydney on the Friday night. I'm probably just leaning towards Collingwood. I want to see something against a really good team from Sydney before I back him in. What do you reckon?
Yeah, Collingwood's injuries worry me, but Sydney are just not firing at the moment. I feel like they need a little bit more. And Chad Warner didn't look right last week. Got subbed out of the game, kicked 2 goals, but I think he only had 10 touches. So just for me, I've got to, even though the injuries, stick with form and go the Pies.
He'll be right, the Chad. He'll be back.
So we think Jordan De Goey's out, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll find out very shortly.
And Schultz as well, I think.
Obviously, Houston got suspended, and Schultz, who actually won the medal in the last game, he's out as well.
Yeah, he was sore
Had
as well.
one of his great games. So for that, I might actually go for Sydney, I think, at Adelaide Oval, just because of, as Mitchie just said, just because of the injuries.
The Saturday game's no good, so let's rifle through them. Tip for North Melbourne Gold Coast, Barra.
Gold Coast, yeah.
Mitch?
You've got me, Jack.
This is a 10:35 Perth game. Don't set your alarm. Just get up for the Eagles.
Whack to the Barossa Valley out there. Yeah, I think there'll be more, be more interest in the wine and the game out there. But look, I'm going the Suns. They're up and about.
The most interesting thing for Freo about this, they'll actually be training at the time, as Justin Longmuir said today, but is the conditions. So it'll be hot out there, but they'll get a bit of a read with that quite open ground on what the wind looks like as well. Carlton and West Coast, we've spoken about. Western Bulldogs and Brisbane. Are we all taking Brisbane here?
Yep.
Yeah, safe bet with Brisbane, but I'm a big rap for what the Bulldogs are doing, considering their injuries.
And you'll be at this one as well on Saturday night, Melbourne and Essendon, who have both our WA teams the next week. So if you wanted to get ahead on a scouting report, this is the one to watch. I'll probably take Essendon here. I feel like if Melbourne lose, they really are in the grips of a bit of a crisis by the time Freo head over for next week.
Yeah, I'm going to go the Demons. I think their midfield should be able to fire. I don't trust Essendon's midfield. I know I put my foot in a few weeks ago and said they couldn't win on Mars and they end up winning. But look, I just think the Demons have to win. So I'm back in Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm the same. Maxi looks very, very serious. And after Petrarca putting his head in the jumper, and which in my era you just wouldn't do. You just wouldn't show the emotion on the ground. You're supposed to have the straight face.
That's because your jumpers were too tight, Barrett.
That's right. And you're supposed to get in the rooms and then you can just throw things like the cricketers do, bats and try to flush their pads and all that sort of stuff. Well, that was a real giveaway and it really didn't help Goodwin as well. I feel like he's in a lot of pain. If he loses this game, I know that Eddie said that Voss will be sacked if they lose to the West Coast Eagles, which I thought was an extraordinary thing to say, given the Hawks lost all those games last year and still, did well. But Goodwin must be under the pump as well. And I just see Simo as the white knight coming over the hill. I reckon he's the man.
He's over at the Masters at the moment, mate.
Has he gone to the Masters, has he?
Yeah, he took up the golf.
He took up golf. I bumped into him at Golf Box down here. I was helping him.
You're his manager.
Do you know how he hits him?
No, he's really picked it up well. And he's next level on his commentary with his special comments. He's really showing his cards.
St Kilda and GWS on the Sunday afternoon. I'll have the Giants. Mitch?
St Kilda have been here all week, so they're going to be well prepped. But after what I saw from the Giants last week, they got a 7-day break and they pretty much cruised for most of that game against West Coast, so they should win.
Big watch on Mateus Philippou for the Saints as well. If he plays, I'm really looking forward to watching him play footy again.
Has Jack Higgins been out of his room, do you know? Has he been playing game gaming.
Can you log on and play some multiplayer sort of stuff with him, Mitch?
Mate, I'm useless at those like shooting games. I'm shocking. Like, if we wanted to play FIFA, we might have a chance. But no, I can't.
He's going to cop
play
it,
those
isn't it?
games.
Can you imagine the fans? Where's this game? Norwood Oval too. They'll be able to get
Nice and
access to
tight.
him.
Yeah.
He will be copping it for bagging Adelaide, saying there's nothing to do there. But full credit to St Kilda and Ross Lyon. Honestly, that winning 3 on the trot. There's just one. With all those injuries and blokes not playing and everyone's saying that you probably had them bottom 4, did you, Mitch?
Yeah, I did. And just quietly, guys, what's the odds on Jack Higgins doing a hammy getting out of bed before that game to try and avoid the crowd?
Norwood Oval, I watched the game. I was over covering a Dockers game last year and I caught Norwood and Glenelg on a Friday night, and it's an awesome place to watch footy, up nice and close, lovely like standing room on the terraces and the old grandstand. But the dimensions don't make for great AFL games. It makes for fine SANFL games, but I think the players get caught out a little bit and they hug that boundary a little bit. But otherwise, that'll be a really good contest, I think.
Yeah, so Jack Higgins in for a big night after he said there's nothing to do in Adelaide and I'll just stay in my room and play games.
Last game of the round, there is something to do in Adelaide. It's this one. This will be epic. Port Adelaide and Hawthorn is the 5:20 Sunday night game. I just want to start by expressing my love for Sunday night footy. It is whenever like a bounce or whatever you're watching comes on the telly on a Sunday afternoon, I'm never ready for it. I always want one last game and I can't stand Sunday overlap. So massive fan of Sunday night footy. I think the Hawks get it done here. What do we reckon?
Mitchie?
Yeah, it's got to be Hawthorn. Port Adelaide, I don't trust. And I wonder how long before Ken Hinckley's parting ways with this team. This handover with Carr, succession plan, whatever you want to call it, isn't working, guys. So for me, it's Hawthorn.
Yeah, popcorn for neutrals, though, isn't it? We'll be getting. You're right. You're right there, Jacko. We'll be getting out the popcorn and sitting down. No, Zach Butter's return was magnificent. Jason Horne-Francis came back to form.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the sort of game where they could actually win at the Adelaide Oval, isn't it? And they would actually make a massive statement. And Will Day, that news about Will Day as well, going to be out for, 4 months?
Yeah,
we
that's a
all
big
had him
blow.
in the Brownlow chop-up.
He had such a different element to their midfield as well. So I think there's going to have to be a bit of a shuffle of roles in there.
And the payback.
Tippett and Barrett?
There's Kenny's dig at Jack Ginnivan as well. So there's
Do you reckon the AFL will make enough money out of this one to pay Kenny his $20,000 back? Because they've plugged it hard.
Yeah, they're not bad. They fine him and then they just
make
milk
it the
crap
prime
out
time
of it.
game. Yeah.
That's right. So I'm going Port. I'm going to tip Port, boys. I reckon that they're going to fire back and they're going to be replaying. What's his name? The captain. Who's the captain from Hawthorn? Sicily, who got stuck in. And what did he say? He said you've been crap for 8 years.
You've been a nowhere club for 8 years.
Oh, I
think I took some words out of that.
That's going to get replayed.
Let's have a look at the Thirsty Camel mailbag.
Saddle up your camel. It's time for the Thirsty Camel mailbag.
All right, this week we'll be giving away a $50 digital voucher thanks to Thirsty Camel. This week's special Hahn Super Dry 4.6% cans, only $61.99 a block. Purchase a specially marked case of Hahn for your chance to win a super long weekend. Get your questions in for next week to thewestsport@wanews.com.au. Please include your mobile number at the bottom of your email and we'll send you a digital voucher if you are one of our weekly winners. Some mailbag questions. This one from Andrew. It's on Gather Round. He says, "Hey Jackson, after successive years with a fixture in Mount Barker, are the Adelaide Hills people hard done by? Lindock this gather round. Why didn't they have the foresight to lock in a contract similar to the grossly unfair MCG Grand Final one, which nominally expires in 2058? Well, I mean, I guess the answer to this is that the gather round contract hasn't been locked in for beyond next year. We know that Tassie have made a play. Clearly, WA has kind of flirted with it for a little bit.
J-Lo made a play today to us.
J-Lo reckons that West is best and that it should be played here. So that'll be part of it. Nothing about gather round is locked in deeper than that contract, obviously. I mean, Mitch, I think you would have done the Mount Barker game last year. The Eagles played Sydney, so you can speak to what that ground's like. But I don't mind the idea of throwing it around a little bit. And I'd say the temporary infrastructure at Mount Barker last year and up at Lindock this year means that you probably can't do both. What do you reckon, Mitch?
Yeah, I think that's probably the reason why Jacko was great out at Mount Barker. I think it's a tourism plug too. The Barossa Valley is the biggest tourism attraction for South Australian government, I think. So they really want to sell that. That's why there's 2 games there and Norwood as well. And then the Adelaide Oval's the centrepiece.
Yeah, I think listening to Andrew Dillon and Peter Malinauskas talk yesterday, I think the Barossa was just a matter of time. Like, I think they probably would have played there from the start, because you're right, it puts people at the heart of what they're trying to sell. We've got another from Mike. Hi, Quarters and team. Welcome to Adelaide and the Gather Round. I'm sure Quarters will be listening, so he'll get this. He'll be on the road potentially today. I typically never travel on public transport except for this week. The excitement and stories from fellow passengers that have travelled from all over the country is extraordinary. So it sounds like Mike might be over there as well. He goes on to say, not wanting to harp on about the Oscar Allen fiasco, but if West Coast let him go for a priority pick, aren't they then in the same predicament as if they select a young Victorian and Victorian club looks to prize him away, aka Harley Reid? How does West Coast break this cycle? A focus on drafting WA talent is not the answer, as per the results since 2018. I'll keep an eye out for you in the German Arms Hotel in Harndorf and shower you a stein of German beer. All the best and safe travels. There you go, Quarters. That one's for you. But we'll pick apart this question, which I think is a really interesting one. So we've spoken about it previously, but if Oscar Allen was to leave as a free agent, based on what we expect that either Brisbane or Hawthorn or whoever wins out there would be paying him, West Coast would get band one compensation. So their compensation pick comes in immediately after their own first-round pick, which means that they could have pick 1 or 2 or pick 2 or 3 or however that lands.
So he's saying that we would pick a Victorian. The Eagles would pick a Victorian basically with that pick.
I guess that's
because
the
there
concern.
isn't a West Australian. Unless, what about Kobe Evans from Perth, Mitchie, our man? Could he be up that high?
I don't know if he's up that high, Barrett. And he's NGA linked anyway.
So the bloke's saying that it's going to be a Victorian kid anyway, that they might get poached back anyway eventually.
Yeah, the worry is, do you pick a top-end talent from over East and end up with the same problem? I think the overarching answer to that is creating a culture, and that involves winning, that keeps players around. I mean, Fremantle have had better success in recent years. You think about their leadership group and their starting midfield is Young, Brayshaw, Sarong, all Victorians, all top-end draft picks, all on long-term deals. So I feel like that's the example, right, Mitch?
Yeah, well, win games of footy, create an environment that players want to be at. And, they've got these young guys coming through that are really close, at West Coast. So keep creating that environment. In terms of, though, talent, the reason they're saying the Victorian is, look, let's face it, a lot more Victorians get drafted every year than West Australians and South Australians. So the chances are you're going to get at least 1 or 2 Victorians as a WA club unless you purposely go for Western Australian talent. I'm going to say this just out there, guys. One, to keep an eye on Cody Curtin at West Coast. I think if he keeps the trajectory he's going, he's going to be a top 5 pick. He can play back, forward. You add him into a side with Archer Reid, Job Shanahan already looks like the best aerial mark at West Coast and hasn't played a game yet. Jack Williams looks talented. They'd obviously need some ruck depth, but they could find that somewhere. So look, I reckon that could really be the makings of a decent attack or a decent forward line for West Coast with Jake Waterman if Oscar Allen does leave. So keep an eye on Cody Curtin for me. I'd like you said, Kobe Evans is a NGA product at West Coast, so you'd expect him to likely land there unless someone bids on him a lot higher than expected. He's a talented player. Wes Wally's the same, the best name in the draft. He's an Eagles NGA player, and so you've got to keep an eye out for those kind of guys. But yeah, look, overall, the chances are you're going to get a Victorian. How do you keep them? Well, you create an environment where they want to stay.
Well said. And I think the other part of that is that not everyone will have the hype like Harley. Not everyone is that kind of generational talent and just have the free will to basically have clubs falling over themselves from before they've played a game. So situations there end up a little bit different. I mean, most draft picks clubs would rather have a look at for a couple of years. This question from a special guest contributor. Hi, Jackson. Should the Suns be congratulated for preparing a bespoke Notice Me pink Guernsey for Gather Round? And should that be their jumper for the future? Please don't tell Ken. Regards, Barbie.
What do you think about that? Because I did see that they were going to have a special jumper, and I don't mind their jumpers, but I noticed they've copped a lot of backlash from people.
I'm all for the pink.
Yeah, me too.
It looks great. It's going to look epic on TV. It's going to be so cool.
Did we just miss the Barbie Ken reference there, Darren?
No, we got it. We got it. Don't worry.
I can tell you that one was actually from Michelle, who was a very regular First Camel mailbag contributor.
I love the jumper, and I actually like West Coast this weekend too. Fremantle not wearing any special jumper this weekend because of the clash. They'll wear some later on, but I think someone told me once, I think you're only allowed 4 or 5 games a year where you can wear a significantly
I think
different
5
jumper.
might be right, yeah.
Yeah, like if I'm the AFL, I'm throwing that rule out the book. You could have 22 different jumpers if you wanted to. So just have a bit of fun with it. Like I love the purple jumper they do for the Starlight at Freo. I love last year at Gather Round where they did the retro jumper at West Coast, and people want to buy it. It makes money for the clubs. It gets people excited. It's a good talking point. So I'm all for more jumpers.
Yeah, I love teams doing something different. Like I watch a lot of soccer and people worry that pink is too far away from Gold Coast colours, but I mean, I'm a Chelsea supporter and they wore yellow as an away kit for many years, and they've worn, lots of white kits, but kits with red on them. And Manchester United wore like a royal blue for many years and in some big games, and Real Madrid have worn pink, and I love it. I think it's something different. It's a selling point. Your logo's on it. You know what it is. You're good to go. So absolutely love that. I can't do the West Coast one. It looks like it's trying to be something vintage, but it's not quite, and they should have just saved it for retro round later in the year and done it properly. That is all our questions for today. We need to pick a winner, and I actually think it's Mike who is writing in presumably from Adelaide. It sounds like he's over there, but the question about this cycle of Victorian draft picks, I think, was a really good one. So, Mike, congratulations to you. You're our winner for the week. Mitchell, go well. Quarters, if you're listening, go well over in Adelaide. Barrett, thanks for joining us, and we'll chat to you on Tuesday.
See you guys.
Thanks, boys.
We are brought to you by TABtouch. Got the touch. Download the TABtouch app today. Chances are you are about to lose. For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.